Hey, Michael David Cobb Bowen here for Cobb Vision. Chilling today, still on vacation, taking a long winter break and doing a little bit of mobile webcamming. Um, I just finished viewing the rather longish one that I made about the existentials of black republicanism and something about conservative values and my changing of my writing focus from the day-by-day blogospheric hash of political issues uh, to a different perspective. And I still haven't really grasped completely what it is I'm going to do with my writing next, or how I'm going to integrate the video blogging with all of that. But that's okay. It's a work in progress. And although I'm not a performance artist, I think it's kind of interesting to watch me get into the process. As it stands, I'd like to start talking today about the nexus of family values and economics. And this is kind of the Moynihan. So keyword Moynihan and Kay Heimowitz I spoke with about a week ago today. She's from the Manhattan Institute and has done a lot of research on families. And I'm also in the middle of the book by Meg Meeker, Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. And what I'm trying to express is my transition, and I think a transition that a number of black partisans will have to make between a distrust of Moynihan and a distrust of conservative criticisms of black family behaviors and the whole Cosby controversy when we talk about unwed mothers, teen pregnancy, STDs, AIDS, HIV, and economic development. Now, from my perspective, as I get into this, I was always of the kind of talented tenth, had those kinds of expectations of myself in relation to the black community. And so, from my perspective, from a young, gifted, and black perspective, the only thing that I felt that black folks lacked was money. So I was assuming primarily by looking at my own family, saying, okay, we're oppressed in America, and how are we oppressed? We are oppressed in that we don't believe in ourselves? No. There was never a black identity existential problem within my family. We always had that sense of dignity, of pride, of not being afraid of white folks, of not being afraid of anybody. I guess we were kind of raised to be fearless in that regard, and so we were raised not to have any self-doubts, and so we didn't. And looking at my own family, it was just I can actually remember rather being shocked when I was in elementary school actually, and I said, your mother doesn't have the same last name as your father? I don't understand that. As a kid, I literally didn't understand that. So with regards to family values, I didn't think that black people needed that emphasis. I didn't think that it was important. And I was, along with most progressives and liberals, saying, what we really need are economics. And so I can remember making the argument after college, when I was in corporate America, as a buppy, saying, money, money, money. That's what we want. We want money. We need economic development, and we need I looked at affirmative action and supported affirmative action in regards to a broadening economic base for African American labor, and I looked at racism's part in convincing Japanese, for example, as they were in the 80s, coming and buying up properties in the West Coast as the establishment of the beginning of the Pacific Rim, trade and culture. And we're saying, well, how is it the Japanese believe these things about black folks? Well, they are internalizing the racism that white folks are promulgating against black folks. And we got into the whole culture wars, and part and parcel of that was the myth of the model minority. And so for me, again, when you have Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye and Earth, Wind and Fire and Aretha Franklin on the radio, when you have Donny Hathaway and Roberta Flack on the radio, you don't have a lot of reason to doubt black culture. You don't have a lot of reason to think, maybe this guy Bootsy, people like him would take over the world. You never thought about that in the 70s, that people who did not have these same values, these old school values, would end up dominating the representation of black culture, and that a lot of black folks would internalize that. I mean, we were understanding that there was some radicalism in Huey and Angela, but it was a necessary push because all blacks were moving in the same direction. But in fact, we were kind of splitting up, and there were folks who were not internalizing. There was I guess, at some point, and I suppose you could say NWA might have been the start of it. But can you imagine the first time you heard NWA, that somebody would take such an attitude, this fake gangster revolutionary kind of pose, and we understood it, but we understood it in the context of, yeah, this is a radical push that we're doing. It's not how we're trying to live. We're trying to create some space on the margins and give us some breathing room here in the middle. But we're not trying to live on the edge. We weren't all trying to be Malcolm X with a machine gun in our balcony, looking over our shoulders all the time. We understood that was some of the necessity in order to make some space. But that's not how we wanted to live. So again, I think in the context of family values, I certainly assumed it. I just assumed it. I assumed that if we looked back in black history, that starting with Marvin Gaye, we would have Luther Vandross, and after Luther Vandross, there would be Freddie Jackson, and somewhere in there would be a Lionel Richie, and black music all the way into the future would be about men professing their love. It would be Jeffrey Osborne. It would be Peabo Bryson. It would be like that forever and ever. We did not expect that those people would disappear, that the old school values of love and family and togetherness, I mean, even Heatwave, happiness, togetherness, lovingness, now I'm blessed with peacefulness. Coming from my generation, even though we were dealing with integration and we were dealing with the broader society, we never thought that our old school values would ever take a back seat to anything, because this was the stuff that we were emerging the best of our communities, and we were bringing it forward into America. And we said, this is how it's going to be. We are going to bless America with our emergence. We are going to bless America with what we know deep in our hearts to be true. We are going to bless America with our freedom, and we are going to teach America a lesson about how to be, because we would never do this racist stuff. We would never treat black women the way that the slave master treated black women. And something happened. And I think the thing that happened was that, quite frankly, a lot of liberals and progressives among us, myself included, as a progressive, got a little bit too impressed with our coalition, with the white liberals who were patronizing us, who were supporting us, who were showing up on Martin Luther King Day with the Socialist Workers Party kind of thing, and saying, we're with you, bro. And we didn't quite recognize that some of these long-haired folks were really, really trying to bring about a cultural revolution. And so I think a lot of radical feminism came in under the doorstop with that. A lot of anti-family, and this is what Kay Heimowitz calls the unmarriage revolution. So everybody understands something about hippies and free love and communes and long hair and Woodstock and the fundamental rebellion, of a segment of white society against their own parents, against their own class, against basically the white middle class. They felt, I think very strongly, that the nuclear family was poison. They felt very strongly that middle class values were poison, that it would have to break, that the family would have to break in order for progress to be made. And I think certainly a lot of feminists believe that. Certainly people in the gay liberation movement felt that. They felt, and perhaps still do. I don't follow it that closely. The bottom line is that there were a number of reasons to de-emphasize the strength of the black family, and a lot of us bought into that. And I can't think of any examples because I don't have that. I didn't rebel in that regard, and I always felt like I was keeping in touch with my parents' values. And there were a few things, there are a few things that I differed on, but ultimately, even through my confusion, I knew that I wanted to have a family, and I was always thinking about how I would improve my family, where I would say, well, my father and mother did it this way, but I'm going to do it this way, and it's going to be that much better. But I will take a lot of lessons that I've learned from family in building my own family, and I think that's been the case for all of us, in my brothers and my sister as well. Again, how did the family get marginalized? How did we come to believe in this thing called the extended family? How did we come to believe that single mothers were going to be okay? Certainly, there's an extraordinary grit and determination that we respected, but we didn't think it was a necessity. I mean, when was it the OJs or the Spinners? I can't remember, but it was Felipe Wynn, I know that, who was singing. So then it was the Spinners. Sadie, don't you know we love you? When he was singing Sadie, there wasn't a Pops in that picture, but we understood that, sometimes she'd be so happy thinking of us and Daddy. Daddy was gone, and we always presumed that he was dead. It wasn't that, he just left, he wasn't important to us at all. That was Papa was a Rolling Stone. And I understood that. But when we were thinking about Sadie, we were not thinking about somebody who was abandoned or who never thought that there would be a value to marriage. Who would say, well, I don't need it. I can do this my own self. And again, it came as a surprise to a lot of us. But now the surprise has manifested itself in a reality where you now have people saying that marriage is acting white. And I look back on my life, and I got married late, and purposely so. I mean, I knew, interestingly enough, as a side note, reading Thomas Sowell in the 80s, said very specifically that parents who wait a little bit longer to have kids, those kids are a little bit more successful because the parents are more stable in life, they've established themselves. And I was born when my folks were in their mid-20s, and my kids were all born after I was 30, after I was 33. So I knew that, and I purposely did it because I was checking it against the reality of my family, which was, could I go to college? Well, yeah, but I'd have to pay for it because I got four brothers and a sister, and they need money too. And then by the time my youngest brother was ready to go to school, Pops was ready to pay, and he was more able to. And so I said, yep, this makes sense. Maybe we should have fewer kids. I mean, if it's important for them to go to college, and then maybe wait till I'm making a little bit more money. And that's an aside in terms of the materiality of one black family planning idea. But again, so let's bring it back to the question of economics and family values. Why do we not want to hear Nancy Reagan tell us how to run our business? Because she's a Republican? Because what? When Nancy Reagan says don't say no, why is that wrong? Why can we not accept conservative criticism of black values? I think it's the same reason we interpret all conservative opinion as being against black folks, because we've bought into the same thing that the countercultural folks have said, which is this white middle class conservative stuck up people will be the death of you, that they will destroy you, that they will eat you alive, that they'll make your lives a living hell. But they're just talking about their own personal experiences. Now, sure, we're not saying that racism goes away. We're not saying that there's some, magical passage to love and happiness and friendliness across, regional and cultural distinctions. But the conservative white middle class was not dangerous. They're not dangerous. And they're not something to be avoided at all costs. And I think we bought a little bit too much into that rebellion, and not having a first-hand experience to say that. I mean, how many times have we wanted to go talk to Bob and say, hey Bob, you know that you're a racist, right? And Bob will say, well, no, I try not to be. I'm a little bit racist, but you should see my cousin Ed. No, he's a real redneck. You don't even want to be around him. I don't even talk to him. And we kind of take Bob at his word. And we don't go to Forsyth County, Georgia, and we don't go to places where we don't think we're going to be accepted, and we just cut ourselves off from a great deal of humanity, which happens to be white. And is that a safe thing to do? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on how much you believe in community. It depends on how much you believe in shared humanity. It depends on how much you believe that people can beat racism, and that means there has to be lessons for everybody. And I don't want to get too much out on a tangent, because this is something I'm writing about right now, which is, after all these years, are we really effective in teaching people to get along beyond the law? I mean, just in pure social terms, are we getting along better? Yeah, we are, because there's a lot of shared culture, but a lot of that shared culture, and then the conservative will tell you, a lot of that shared culture comes from this liberal Hollywood. Yes, it is true that there are groups that have crossed over very well, and that hip-hop is selling to white suburban teenagers. But are those the right white suburban teenagers? I mean, is that where we really want to go? Is that really the culture that we want to share? Is what Hollywood is selling? I don't think so. In fact, I think not. And I think distinctively not. Because it's not right. Now I'm thinking about it, and I just want to give a male beef, because the poor guy from Everybody Loves Raymond just he just died. And we were talking about sitcoms the other, Cosby Show, Family Ties, Different World, Jeffersons, or something like that, about what the role of Hollywood portrayals of family really have been. And I could talk about that another time. But again, who are the families that Hollywood portrays that we really want to be like? I haven't watched that stuff in a long time, but I know we had to have Murphy Brown, and conservatives got into that whole thing. And there is a question, and obviously, if you are one of those white middle class folks, and your daughter ran away to live in a commune, you would probably think that your values are under attack. And I think those of us who aspire to a family ideal should take very seriously whether or not we are in control of our destinies as families. We should look at what our young daughters are encouraged to look like, how they're encouraged to act and behave, how they're encouraged to dress, and seriously, kind of take Chris Rock at his word. It's more than keeping our daughter off the pole. It's about keeping her off the streets, because the streets are not conducive to where we want our young daughters to be, and where we want mothers to come from, and the kind of relationships that we want them to have, if we are going to have any continuity in our families. So we cannot, we have to make sure that we playing some Freddie Jackson and some Marvin Gaye, and not just let's get it on. I mean, we have to think about distant love and the discipline that it takes to maintain real, true love, and ask ourselves, when we turn on the radio or we're playing CDs in our house, where's Peaches and Herb? Are people being happy to be reunited? And I can't go into the egregious examples of what's wrong, because I just don't even listen to it. I used to expose myself to it, because I'm thinking, man, we didn't have this when I was a kid. That was what was inside of my dirty little head. And now they got, Yaya Twins singing all that stuff, and mystical, but but we have to really think about what values we want to propagate forward, and what examples we want to make of ourselves and of our families, and what that means for the quality of life of America. And that is something that we have control over. I mean, I go back to the 80s again and say, I would have liked to had my opportunity to speak to, the Japanese real estate consortium that was buying up real estate in downtown Los Angeles. And I would have liked to sat on Maxine Waters' committee when she was trying to get an international consortium of investors to raise money for her district and do some enterprise zones and some capital infusion. But I am struck by what Glenn Lurie has said that I just read the other day, which is relationships before transactions. Relationships before transactions. We have to make our relationships work. We have to make our relationships with all of humanity work. And now I'm just waxing poetic here, and I don't have any prepared words and any prepared conclusions. These are just the directions that I'm thinking about. But I think we do have to say that there is more at stake. It's 3 o'clock. We have more at stake than just money. Every family is not like my family. Every family cannot just say, all we need right now is more money. Because actually, when you get to the point when you can say all you need is more money, then money doesn't really matter. And so I'm wondering how liberal and progressive politics are going to reconcile their absorption of this counter-revolutionary stance, which has been destructive to all the families in America, and stand apart from the kind of permanent bohemian thing where you're like the rapper Common, still rapping about how you're going to take care of whatever black queen and still not be married. Common's not married, is he? I don't think he is. Okay. Anyway, because we know Kid and Play and Salt and Pepper, I think they just kind of disappeared off the scene. Did they get married? They got married and had kids. They couldn't be doing all that house party stuff. So, at some point, we're all going to have to reconcile ourselves to old school family values. That is, if we want the black family to persist, not just survive, not just exist, but be the predominating paradigm of what we look for when we have a little extra time, a little extra money, a little extra spiritual oomph in ourselves. We say this is what we want to grab onto, and this is how we want to express ourselves. And it's a very important thing. We can't allow that to be marginalized. And it's not about saying no to gay liberation. It's not about saying no to lesbian love. It's about saying yes to the core of our values, the core of any society, and what keeps us all going forward. Yeah, we need devil's advocates. Yeah, we need people like Andy Warhol. We need people like Bootsy Collins. We need an occasional Ice Cube. We need artists. We need people who make monuments of their lives to make a counterintuitive point. But we cannot let a counter-revolution undermine the basic foundations of what keeps us strong. And we have seen how it has devastated the potential for a lot of folks to do what they ought to be doing. And I'm not going to pontificate much more because I see a CD on the shelf that I haven't listened to in a long time, and I think I'd like to play that. I think it's Brown Fellini's. So, this is Michael David Cobb Bowen for Cobb Vision, blurbing on and signing off. Peace. Now I press the stop button and it'll stop.